Growing up, I always felt like an outsider in my own family. From as early as I can remember, my younger brother was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. I was just there, an afterthought. I remember this one time when I was about 10 years old. I had worked really hard on a science project for school. I spent weeks building this model of the solar system, carefully painting each planet and positioning them just right. When I brought it home to show my parents, they barely glanced at it. "That's nice, dear," my mom said, not even looking up from her magazine. But when my brother came home with a C+ on his math test, it was like he'd won the Nobel Prize. They took him out for ice cream to celebrate his improvement. That's how it always was. My accomplishments were brushed aside, while my brother's smallest victories were treated like major events. Family gatherings were the worst. Aunts and uncles would fawn over my brother, asking about his hobbies and friends. Me? I was lucky if they remembered my name. As I got older, the favoritism became even more apparent. When I turned 16, I got my driver's license on the first try. I was so proud of myself, but my parents barely acknowledged it. 2 years later, when my brother got his license after 3 attempts, they threw him a party. A party for passing a driving test. It wasn't just the big things either. Every day was a reminder that I was second best. At dinner, my brother always got the biggest portion. When we went shopping, he got new clothes while I got hand-me-downs. Even on my birthday, somehow the conversation always turned to my brother's achievements. I tried so hard to gain their approval. I got good grades, joined clubs, even won a few academic competitions. But nothing was ever enough. It was like I was invisible, living in the shadow of the golden child. By the time I was 18, I was so tired. Tired of trying, tired of hoping, tired of disappointment. I knew I had to get out. The day I left for college was both terrifying and liberating. As I packed my bags, I realized I wasn't just leaving for school. I was leaving behind a family that had never truly seen me. It hurt, but I knew it was the right decision. I had to find a place where I could be more than just the other child, the afterthought. I had to find a place where I could be me. Leaving home at 18 was the most terrifying and exhilarating thing I'd ever done. I remember standing in my dorm room, surrounded by boxes, feeling completely alone for the first time in my life. But you know what? It was the good kind of alone. The kind where you can finally hear your own thoughts. Those first few months were tough. I had to learn how to do everything for myself: laundry, cooking, managing my time. But with each small victory, I felt myself growing stronger. I started to realize that I was capable of so much more than I'd ever been allowed to believe. I threw myself into my studies, determined to prove to myself, not my family, that I was worth something. I joined clubs, made friends who actually wanted to hear what I had to say. For the first time in my life, I felt seen. There were moments of doubt, of course. Late nights when I'd lie awake wondering if I'd made the right choice. But then I'd remember the suffocating feeling of being in that house, always in the shadow, and I knew I couldn't go back. I worked part-time jobs to support myself, took out loans, and somehow made it through. Graduation day was surreal. As I stood there in my cap and gown, I realized that no one from my family was there to see it. But you know what? I was okay with that. I had done this for me, not for them. After college, I moved to a new city, got my first real job, and started building a life for myself. It wasn't always easy, but it was mine. I made mistakes, learned from them, grew. I discovered passions I never knew I had, met people who valued me for who I was, not who they wanted me to be. And then one day, I met Sarah. She was brilliant, kind, and she looked at me like I was the most interesting person in the world. For the first time, I felt truly loved and appreciated. Our relationship wasn't perfect. No relationship is, but it was real. We supported each other, challenged each other, grew together. When I proposed to Sarah, it was the happiest day of my life. As we planned our wedding, I realized that I had finally found what I'd been looking for all along: a sense of belonging, of being valued just for being me. I thought I had finally escaped the shadow of my past. I was building a new life, a better life. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. and mine was just around the corner, waiting to upend everything I thought I knew about love, family, and myself. You know, they say ignorance is bliss, and for a while it really was. Sarah and I had been married for 2 years, and I thought we were happy. I really did, but looking back, I guess I should have seen the signs. It all started when my brother reached out online, saying he wanted to reconnect, that our parents missed me. I was hesitant, but Sarah encouraged me to give them a chance. Family is important, she said, if only I had known. I invited them over thinking it would be a fresh start, but introducing my brother to Sarah, that was my first mistake. I didn't notice it then, but there was a spark between them, something I later wish I'd never seen. Months went by, and my brother started visiting more often. I thought it was great at first, my family trying to mend bridges, but then Sarah told me she was pregnant. I was over the moon, truly. We'd been trying for a while, and it felt like everything was falling into place. But then things started to feel off. My brother's visits became more frequent after we announced the pregnancy. I caught him touching Sarah's belly, talking to it. When I mentioned it to Sarah, she brushed it off. "He's just excited to be an uncle," she said, but something in her eyes didn't sit right with me. I tried to shake off the suspicion, but it gnawed at me. The way they looked at each other, the inside jokes I wasn't part of. It was like watching my childhood all over again. Being on the outside, not quite fitting in. One night when Sarah was about 6 months along, I couldn't take it anymore. While she slept, I checked her phone. What I found, it was like a punch to the gut. Messages between her and my brother, proving the baby was his. They'd been together for months, and worse, they had no intention of telling me the truth. They were planning to wait until after the baby was born, then she'd divorce me and be with him. All while I'd be paying child support for a kid that wasn't even mine. I confronted Sarah the next morning. She tried to deny it at first, but when I mentioned the messages, she broke down. Seeing her cry, confessing to everything, it felt like my whole world was crumbling around me. You know what the worst part was? When I called my parents to tell them what happened, they sided with my brother and Sarah. All their talk about us being equally important, it was just words, empty words. In that moment, I realized that the betrayal wasn't just from Sarah, it was from my entire family. The people who were supposed to love and support me had once again chosen someone else over me. And this time it had cost me not just my marriage, but the child I thought was mine. The taste of that betrayal, it's something I'll never forget. It was bitter, yes, but it was also the wake-up call I needed. It was time to stand up for myself, once and for all. The divorce was a nightmare. I thought I'd hit rock bottom when I discovered Sarah's affair, but I was wrong. The real hell was just beginning. I was emotionally drained, barely functioning. But Sarah and my family, they were ruthless. They painted me as the villain in their story. According to them, I was toxic, controlling, forcing Sarah to quit her job. All lies, of course, but they stuck to their narrative. My own parents, the people who were supposed to have my back, reinforced these lies. They claimed they distanced themselves from me because of my misogynistic attitude and anger issues. It was like they were talking about a stranger, not their own son. I was so broken, so tired of fighting, that I didn't even try to defend myself at first. I just wanted it all to be over. Sarah's lawyer used this against me, portraying my silence as guilt. Before I knew it, I was losing everything. The court proceedings were a blur. I sat there watching my life being torn apart piece by piece. Sarah walked away with a significant amount of money in my car. The only thing I managed to keep was the house, a hollow victory in the grand scheme of things. The worst part, the child support. Even though I knew the baby wasn't mine, even though Sarah had betrayed me in the worst possible way, I was still ordered to pay. It felt like a sick joke, like the universe was laughing at me. Throughout all of this, my family stood firmly by Sarah and my brother's side. They attended every court hearing, offering them support, while I sat alone. The betrayal cut deep, reopening childhood wounds I thought had long healed. I remember the day the divorce was finalized. I should have felt relieved, but all I felt was empty. As I walked out of the courthouse, I saw them. Sarah, my brother, my parents, huddled together, smiling. They looked like a perfect family unit, one I had never been truly part of. That image haunted me for months. I'd lie awake at night, replaying every moment, wondering where I went wrong, what I could have done differently. But the truth was, I hadn't done anything wrong. I was just collateral damage in their pursuit of happiness. The divorce left me financially strained and emotionally shattered. I was a shell of my former self, barely recognizing the man in the mirror. But somewhere deep inside, a spark of defiance still burned. They had taken so much from me, but I refused to let them take my spirit. As I closed the door on that chapter of my life, I made a promise to myself. This was rock bottom, yes, but the only way from here was up. I didn't know how, but I was determined to rebuild my life, stronger than ever before. Little did I know, the journey ahead would test me in ways I never imagined. After the divorce, I was a mess, but I knew I couldn't stay down forever. I had to rebuild my life piece by piece. So I did the only thing I could think of. I threw myself into my work. At first it was just a distraction, a way to keep my mind off the pain. I'd stay late at the office, come in on weekends. My colleagues probably thought I was crazy, but work was the only place where I felt I had any control. Slowly, almost without realizing it, I started to excel. Projects that used to intimidate me became challenges I looked forward to. I was taking risks, coming up with innovative solutions. My bosses started to notice. About 6 months after the divorce, I was offered to lead a major project. It was a huge responsibility, something I might have shied away from before. But this time I grabbed the opportunity with both hands. I poured everything I had into it, my time, my energy, my newfound determination. The project was a success. It opened doors I never even knew existed. Suddenly, I was being invited to important meetings. My opinion was being sought after. For the first time in my life, I felt truly valued for my skills and ideas. A year passed, then 2. I was climbing the corporate ladder faster than I ever thought possible. Each promotion, each success felt like a small victory against those who had underestimated me. But it wasn't just about work. As I grew more confident professionally, I started to heal personally too. I began to go out more, reconnect with old friends, make new ones. I even started dating again. Nothing serious, but it felt good to know I could still connect with people. I also started taking care of myself physically. I joined a gym, started eating better. It wasn't just about looking good, it was about feeling good, feeling strong. Every time I pushed myself to run an extra mile or lift a heavier weight, I felt like I was leaving the old broken me behind. Then, about 2 years after the divorce, it happened. I got called into my boss's office. My heart was pounding. Had I done something wrong? But when I walked in, he was smiling. He offered me a promotion, a big one. Better position, better salary, even a company car. As I sat there listening to him praise my hard work and dedication, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Pride, real, genuine pride in myself and what I had accomplished. Walking out of that office, I felt like a different person. The man who had been betrayed, who had lost everything, he was gone. In his place was someone stronger, more resilient, more successful than I had ever been before. That night, as I celebrated my promotion alone in my favorite restaurant, I realized something. The divorce, the betrayal, as painful as they had freed me from the shadows of my past, from the expectations of others. For the first time in my life, I was truly, completely myself. I thought this was it, the happy ending to my story. But life had one more twist in store for me, and it would force me to confront everything I thought I had left behind. I thought I was finally free from my past, but I couldn't have been more wrong. It all started with a simple social media post about my promotion. Within days, my mother was calling incessantly, begging me to visit. I ignored her at first, but she wouldn't let up. She even showed up at my office, causing a scene. To avoid further embarrassment, I reluctantly agreed to visit. When I arrived at their new house, bought with the divorce settlement money I later learned, I was met with a bizarre sight. My parents, my brother, and Sarah were all there, looking desperate and disheveled. It turns out my brother had lost his job, and they were struggling financially. The child support I was paying wasn't enough to support their lifestyle anymore. They had the audacity to ask me for money. Can you believe it? After everything they'd done, they expected me to bail them out. My father gave me a lecture about family responsibility, as if he had any right to talk about that. My mother cried, Sarah pleaded, and my brother, he just stood there looking smug as ever. I was in shock. I just walked out without saying a word. But they weren't done. They started showing up at my house, calling me constantly, even trying to guilt trip me through mutual acquaintances. It was relentless. The final straw came when Sarah called, threatening to take me back to court for higher child support payments. That's when I decided enough was enough. I wasn't going to be their punching bag anymore. I hired the best lawyer I could find. We gathered evidence, statements from friends and relatives who had witnessed their mistreatment of me, records of their lies during the divorce, everything. I was ready to fight. The day of the hearing arrived. I walked into that courtroom with my head held high. When they saw the mountain of evidence we had, the look on their faces, I'll never forget it. Sarah's smug smile disappeared. My brother's arrogance crumbled. My parents looked ashamed for the first time in their lives. The judge ruled in my favor. Not only did I not have to increase the child support, but it was terminated entirely. The truth about Sarah's infidelity and their lies during the divorce came to light. It was over. I had won. As we left the courthouse, my family tried one last time to appeal to me. My mother cried, my father looked desperate, but I felt nothing. I realized at that moment that I had finally truly moved on. I walked away from them that day, and I haven't looked back since. It wasn't easy. There were nights when the guilt tried to creep in, when I wondered if I was being too harsh. But then I'd remember all they had put me through, and I knew I had made the right choice. Today, I'm happier than I've ever been. I have a successful career, true friends who value me, and most importantly, I have peace. I've learned that sometimes the family you choose is more important than the one you're born into. Do I miss them sometimes? Sure, but I don't miss who they were. I miss the idea of what a family should be. And that's okay, because I've realized that I don't need their approval or their love to be happy. I've found that within myself. This journey has been long and painful, but I wouldn't change it for anything. It's made me who I am today, strong, independent, and finally truly free.